Upper Midwest's biggest boating show is back. The Discover Boating Minneapolis Boat Show, in partnership with Progressive Insurance, is headed to the Minneapolis Convention Center January 23rd through the 26th. Head over to our contest page for your shot at a family 4-pack of tickets.
Had an interesting question come in before Robert Smith joined us at about 3:30. In fact, he's going to join me again on a 2-hour edition of Sermons Sunday morning, sometime between 9 and 11. I'll ask you it because you got the great football analytical mind, because I kind of expected that Smith would kind of brush it off like, okay, yeah, it's the B-Flow defense, cute little defense, but we were the 98 Vikings. We had Moss, we had CC, we had Robert Smith, we had Randall Cunningham playing well that year, etc. Who was the tight end on that team? I don't remember.
Andrew Glover.
Sure. Was it Glover? It might have been.
Yeah.
What would the B-Flow, how would the B-Flow defense have done against that offense? Or what, maybe the better question is, what do you think its approach, at least strategically, would have been against Moss?
I don't know if there was ever a defense that really found a way to stop him. I think he would have obviously devoted coverage to him, but what he would have tried to do, and what he always tries to do, is muck up the line of scrimmage to the point where it doesn't matter necessarily. I mean, you don't want to leave Randy Moss open, right, but let's muck up the line of scrimmage enough that the quarterback is either running for his life, or thinking he's going to be under pressure and not being under pressure, or thinking he's going to have a clean pocket and end up having a late arriving blitz, and prevent the quarterback from getting the ball to him. Because that was the other part. Randall would just go back and just launch these moonshots and towards Randy, and even if you did have him covered, right, it didn't matter. And so I think that would have probably been what Flores would try, and it's basically what he tries to do every week nowadays too.
By the way, let's get to some the breaking news sounder, if I can find the right page. I think it's on page 1.
Oh boy!
Opening second half kickoff return touchdown for the Fighting Irish. So they scored 10 points in 50 seconds at the end of the first half, and they get, on the first play of the second half, a kickoff return for a touchdown. They're about to go up on Georgia 20-3 in the Sugar Bowl, with a chance, obviously, to advance to the Final Four. Interesting update there.
Not many close games in these playoffs.
No.
I'm sure you've talked about it.
I have. I'm not offended by it, though.
Yeah.
Some people are offended by it. It's like, well, we all want closer games, but I don't think that necessarily means the teams weren't worthy. I think we've had blowouts in NFL playoffs before. We've had blowouts in NBA. It's bizarre. I don't know. I'm not as hung up on it. And also sometimes, look at Oregon, Ohio State. The first time they met, it was a barn burner. This time,
yeah, it's amazing that
things
game
changed.
Was the way it was.
The way it was. Anyway, so I guess the more important by the way, Kevin Seifert in studio for the hour, a guy who basically just sort of fell into an ESPN position, according to... Did you consider that bulletin board material from Lavelle?
The guy that I thought was my guy maybe isn't my guy.
He claims to be everybody's friend, but it sounded like maybe a subtle jab.
Slipped into the ESPN stream. Does ESPN know that I'm still there?
According to him, no.
Is this like an Office Space thing where the payroll doesn't realize they're still paying me?
Yeah. I'm just saying. You never struck me as a guy who needs bulletin board material, but maybe you do.
Well, everybody needs a little bit of kick in the butt every now and then.
Very, very true. Questions for Seifert, 64686. That's the Bradshaw and Bryant KFAN text line. They showed a couple of Georgia fans dressed in, I don't even know how to describe, just looks of utter horror on their faces, given now the 17-point Georgia deficit. Georgia, remember, is a 2 seed. Notre Dame came in as a 7.
Wow.
I think probably the more appropriate question is, how does B-Flow do anything perhaps differently than he's done in the first 3 games against the Lions as coordinator to try to, hamper the best offense in football?
I think that you mentioned earlier the takeaways as my voice is going.
Your voice is going. Do you have water? Go ahead. If you need to grab some water, take some water. I was in that position earlier in this program as well, so I understand. And then it becomes a combination of either a coughing jag or dry throat, which can also cause that particular issue as well. Yeah.
The issue, I think, in the reason the Lions have won these 4 of the 5 games against the O'Connell Vikings is the turnovers, and not just the Vikings have committed 9 turnovers in those 4 losses, but the takeaway margin is -7, so that the Vikings have only forced 2, and so that's I think that's been a big reason why the Vikings have not been able to compete in these games. And so Jared Goff just doesn't, he did against Houston, obviously. I think that was the 5 interception game.
5 picks, yeah. And they won the game, didn't they?
They won the game because of a bunch of field goals.
Right.
But he's generally not prone to do that. But that will be what the B-Flow defense needs to do. They need to get him off his marks, I think is the best way to put it. They did that a little bit in the first game. I think Grenard had the sack that caused the fumble with Ivan Pace returned, and they got the lead. And so if you can get past their really good offensive line and get Goff off his marks, you have a decent chance. But that is not an easy thing to do, and they didn't do a ton of it in that first game.
Do the Lions think this way? And by this way, I mean, all right, look. We're aware that we're missing a bunch of defensive players. We're going to get one of them back. Is that correct?
Well,
maybe.
Yeah, Anzalone is practicing, the linebacker, Alex Anzalone, but it is not clear if he's going to play or not.
All right, but they know even if he's back, we don't have a full complement. We know what the 49ers did to us. We're not a very good, not going to admit this publicly, but we know behind the scenes we're not as good a defensive team as we might have been with everybody healthy. And so we are also aware of how good their offense can be. So, all right, we'll try it's a tried and true trick that I don't know if many teams pay attention to it anymore, but once upon a time it was called, well, how do you keep the team away from the other team, from the other team's offense? You just hold on to the ball. And you do that by running, short passing, sustained, long 7 to 8 minute drives. They certainly have the personnel to do that, right? I mean, they've got 15. They sometimes play 10 offensive linemen on a play, which I don't think is unprecedented if it's legal. And even with Montgomery out, they still, I think, can run the ball pretty damn well. Is it possible they go that route, or is that not the way the Lions, this offense and this coordinator thinks?
It's, even the running back they have left, Jahmyr Gibbs, is like a big play running back. He
might run too fast.
Yeah.
Yes.
But I think that's obviously an ideal scenario for the Lions if they can possess the ball, get down the field, score touchdowns, and limit the possessions that the Vikings have. I don't particularly expect them to do. I don't feel like Dan Campbell is a let's do something different than what got us here kind of guy. And so if I had to guess what he would be doing, what he would be thinking in this situation, it's okay. I guess we're just going to have to score more than they do. And so you saw that against Buffalo with the onside kicks. You saw that, you see that with his 4th down decisions, and given the state of his defense, not necessarily wrong all the time. Even if they're unconventional or in a spot where even the analytics say it's not necessarily a good idea. So I guess I would be blown away if he does what you're talking about, which, and again, it's a good idea.
Yeah.
But I guess I'd be blown away if they're like three yards in a cloud of dust, or they're just even running screens, or they're doing things that are clearly different than what got them here, clearly shying away from their strength to basically protect their defense.
I think I have this stat right. We have 2 takeaways in the 3 games Flores has been the coordinator against the Lions. If that number's right, that's obviously not very many, given that's the strength, one of the strengths of this defense. So if it's, let's just say it's even money, where there's not a turnover differential. Both teams have 1 or both teams have 0. Yeah. Can the Vikings win this game without the takeaway advantage?
I think so. Yeah, I think that had they not been so far behind. I mean, you could say that they're behind in the turnover ratio because they didn't get enough takeaways. But to me, like the issue was how many giveaways they had.
Right.
You think of the Nick Mullins games. I think it was like 6 interceptions in 2 games.
Yeah,
and
right.
And they were like, in both of those games, they were throwing the ball up and down the field. And they've done that a lot against the Dan Campbell era defense, where Justin Jefferson has gone off in a bunch of the games. And I think Nick Mullins had 400 and some yards against them in one game,
Yeah.
and Kirk Cousins had 400 and some yards in another game. And, obviously Sam Darnold is kind of like the performance has been ascending here in the second half of the season. And so, if they do all that and they just don't turn the ball over and don't give extra possessions to the Lions,
Yeah, right.
and if the Vikings defense stops them on one or two possessions, that could be all you need. I mean, if you were to sort of simulate it in an analytics, you would think this game would be like a 40 to 30 kind of game in the Vikings' favor. And so we'll see if they get to that point, because I think that the Vikings defense is good enough to hold the Lions under, the 40 points, for sure. And I know if they get a few takeaways, it'll do a lot more than that. And the Vikings offense is in a position where they, 40 points should not be considered like, a dream. Like that's a real goal, I think.
All right, I want to come back and get a little. You're heading towards it. It appears anyway. Your prediction for this game. A couple thoughts on that. A lot of good text coming in. We've got Seifert for, as I said, the hour. Minnesota Wild Hockey will take over at 6 o'clock against the.
Join the Power Trip Zach Halverson tonight at Heartbreakers in Chaska for a Wild watch party. Get there at 6 p.m. to watch your Minnesota Wild in action and to sign up for your chance to qualify for first-round playoff tickets this year. Get the full details now at KFAN.com, keyword calendar.
Is this stat accurate? This comes from 612 guy, Arik. Vikings are 11-0 with Cashman playing, 1-2 without Blake. How big a force is Cashman in helping the running defense against the Detroit Lions?
Well, they're 14-2, so I guess they're probably 14-0 without him, or maybe 13-0 without him. Either way, he did not play in either of their losses, and it's hard to say
Who
that.
Who else did we lose to? The Rams?
The Rams and the Lions.
That's back-to-back, right?
Yeah, back-to-back. It was the Lions, tough game against the Lions, and 4 days later they fly out to L.A. and lose by 10 after the face mask incident, uncalled face mask incident. It's hard to attribute wins to an inside linebacker, and it was interesting that Blake did not even get like an alternate in terms of Pro Bowl voting this year, but because he's had a great season. And they brought him here for a very specific role, and he's been awesome at it, which is being able just to cover a ton of space, literally in when he's in pass coverage, allows Ivan Pace to just like be a pass rusher most of the time and not have to worry about too much coverage for him. And when he does blitz, he's pretty good at that too. So he's really good at all the things that they need him to be good at. And that's certainly helped their defense when he's been there. I don't know that I can attribute all the wins to him, but he did miss both of their losses. And so that's notable. And, it's too bad that he didn't get some recognition for the Pro Bowl voting today.
You are picking, it appears. Well, I won't speak for you. Who wins this game?
Well, I don't have to pick. ESPN likes the smarter people to do that. But I don't know. I just I actually, step back a few steps. The Lions Dan Campbell decided to play all his starters Monday night.
You think he's going to regret that?
Well, everybody's like, well, it worked. Nobody got hurt. And that's not the only thing. It's like the Vikings got off the field Sunday evening at 6:30. The Lions got off the field Monday night at so it was probably our time, probably 10:30, 11 o'clock.
At least, yeah.
Then they have to fly halfway across. So the Vikings have almost a 30-plus hour advantage in rest time and recovery time. And that actually, teams track that stuff. They use that as part of their plans for practice. That's just an objective advantage that the Vikings started the week with, And so even though no one got hurt per se, they played a football game 30 hours later, and there's no way to speed up the recovery process any more than the Vikings are trying to speed up the recovery process. So the Vikings will be more rested for the game. And that doesn't always mean the more rested team wins, but they walk onto the field already with that advantage. They walk onto the field with their offense playing better than it has at any time, and really probably in the Kevin O'Connell era. And it's the first time that they've basically had all of their weapons at full, capacity. I mean, Addison was playing earlier in the year, but he had the ankle. So Addison playing the best football of his life. TJ Hawkinson pretty close to what he was at his peak, as he continues to come back from this knee, but certainly giving them exactly what they want. Justin Jefferson playing at the top of his game. Sam Darnold playing the best football of his life, ever. And the offensive line, playing certainly well enough to support all that. So they walk in with a significant advantage offense versus the Lions defense. And then, then the wild card becomes like, to what extent can the Vikings defense slow down the Lions' understandably awesome offense?
That's the game.
And that's where it is. And I think that there's enough there that they can at least slow the rock coming down the mountain a little bit. And so I look at it and I think this, I'm surprised that the Vikings, I think the Lions are fat, it's gone back and forth,
right.
But for me, it seems like the Vikings are the pick, and the only reason not to is if you think that they're not battle tested, or they're not going to show up in prime time, or they're not going to respond well to this level of intensity. I mean, but even then, people don't realize this. The Vikings are the oldest team in the league in terms of if you look at it in terms of who actually plays, the most snaps. And so there's plenty of experience on their team for this. And so I look at it as almost every sort of X's and O's advantage that you could draw up from a big picture perspective, they have, and they'll be more rested. And so I think going in, I expect them to win. Am I predicting them to win? I suppose that's the same thing, but I certainly think that even the national expectation should be that they're going to win this game as well.
If I got my math right, and I think I do in this case, the Lions have scored 40 or more 6 times this year.
Yeah.
The Vikings have scored 40 or more once.
Yeah.
Right? That was against the Atlanta game. Does that give you any pause? Because I think, ordinarily I'd say, well, it's the old first team to 30. But I look at the Lions, even with the Vikings defense, and I go, well, they score 40 routinely.
Yeah.
So that to me is really the story, is 30. If the Vikings hold them to 30 or under 30, I would say
they're going to win.
But if not, if it becomes an old-fashioned shootout, I still have a hard time picking against them. And I guess that goes back to, well, the Vikings are healthier defensively. They're supposed to be enough there defensively to maybe hold them to, let's say, more like 30. But that means the Vikings got to get closer to 40, and they've only gotten to 40 once.
You're right. And there's been times when they've played other games where they've played portions of the game to score, and the way you would go to get 40 points, but haven't played the entire game. And even that Falcons game, I think it was pretty close, and they weren't on pace for 40 points till sort of the end game there, where they just kept rolling. And so I think like I said earlier, I think 40 points is not a dream scenario
in this
for the
case.
Vikings. I think that's a realistic thing. They might need to get there, but I really do think they can get there.
The Niners, what'd they finish up? 34?
Yeah.
Wasn't 40-34? Was that the final?
Yeah, I believe so. Yeah.
And they were, I don't think did either team punt in the first? I don't know. There were very few punts. The Lions, of course, don't even try to punt when they want, when they're supposed to punt.
And there's even like
but it was in San Fran. It wasn't in Detroit.
Right. Yep. But there's even matchups within the matchups that are really interesting to me. And we have a story coming out that'll include this tomorrow. But everybody talks about, the Lions 4th down. You got to be prepared for 4 downs instead of 3. Guess who by far the number 1 4th down defense in the NFL is? It's the Vikings. I think they're stopping the teams are only converting 35% of the 4th down attempts against them. That's by far the best in the league. The league average is 57%, because usually people only go for 4th down when it's really close. But the Vikings, Flores has actually made this a big part of his preparation. In the old days, you used to come up with 3rd down and what are you going to do on 3rd down? What do you think the opponent's going to do on 3rd down? Well, now he does that for 4th down, and there's probably a pretty limited amount of plays that most teams use on 4th downs that you can prepare for. And so they're actually really good strategically. It's not just a random stat. there's been more fourth downs attempted against them this year than any other team in the league. So it's not like it's like 5 times it's happened. So they are really good at that. And that's like a bread and butter thing that the Lions have, that the Vikings, if anyone's going to slow them down on it, the Vikings would be one of them.
How much have we, in the games against them, have we blitzed? And regardless of whatever that number has been, what do you expect? As you mentioned, a lot of his deception at the line of scrimmage, but ultimately, do you think, that cliche about getting Goff off his spot, does that force them to blitz more than they would like to, or what do you expect Sunday night?
I think they would probably like to blitz as little as possible, if that makes sense. I think that because one thing that we can point out about the B-Flow defense this year is the 2 teams that have beat them are maybe the best 2 most experienced quarterbacks they faced in Goff and Stafford, and had a better understanding of what they were bringing, or pretending to bring and not bringing, or these kind of like getting in and out of different coverages. And so those 2 quarterbacks did probably the best job of anybody this year in sort of identifying a lot of the things that have confused other quarterbacks. And so what has always been said is if you're a really good quarterback, you want to be blitzed, because you know how to respond and you know where the open guy is going to be. And we've seen that. We've seen that when the Vikings, it's just math. When they devote a lot of people to the actual pass rush, there's going to be people open, and the bet is that the quarterback's not going to be able to get it to him. And so I'd be really surprised if they come out with one of their big 50% blitz rates in this game, or I would expect it to be much less than that. If it's not working, then he's pretty willing to shift in midstream. Like last game against the Packers, they were not blitzing Jordan Love very much early, and then once he started getting rolling a little bit, then they mixed it up, and they did. And so sometimes you see that as well. But I would think that blitzing Jared Goff 50-60% of the time in a game is not going to lead you to where you want to be.
Kevin Seifert, ESPN and ESPN.com. I'll ask you the same question I asked Lavelle. Is winning Sunday night literally the difference between getting to the Super Bowl and not?
For the Vikings, I think so, because whoever loses this game or both teams are going to be, beat to hell after this game. This is going to be a very physical, emotional, draining game. And the difference between getting the week off and having to turn around and play a wild card thing alone is a massive thing. Like, I'm just a big believer in these. We talked earlier about the recovery the Lions had versus the Vikings this week, and just having that extra 30 hours, having a full week to get your body right when you're talking about the oldest team in the NFL is huge. Obviously, if you had a preference, you would want to play all your playoff games at home, and I think that's been the case since the beginning of time. And there's always been this wiggle gray area of like, well, do you really want a week off? Do you want to keep the momentum going and all that? I think in the case of the Vikings, that extra week, especially coming off what we all anticipate being just a very mentally and physically draining game, would be a massive benefit for them and a massive deficit heading into the wild card if they end up losing.
Help me understand. I thought I saw an item from Florio indicating that people don't quite get the fact that even if you lose this game, that there's still a decent chance that you could end up playing as many as 2 home games. Is that true? How does that work? I'm all confused.
Well, I mean, the highest seed. If all the high seeds lose,
I guess
you're definitely going to. The first game is going to be on the road.
Definitely on the road, right?
I guess if you're the 5th seed and the 1, 2, 3, and 4 lose in the
divisional round,
in the divisional round maybe, but then that would only, and potentially. You
I still don't like your chances. I don't think you're
like I would not count on all that, but like maybe math-wise, certainly the championship game. I guess I'd have to think about whether you could play a home divisional game as the 5th seed, because you'd be playing. I guess it's possible if the 2 and 3 lose. If the 2 and 3 lose in the wild card round, and you're the fourth, and you're the fifth, and you've beaten the fourth, then yeah, I guess so.
Should Vikings fans worry about coaching ego in this game to the extent that, KOC misses nothing, right? And he may not tell you much, but you can tell that there's stuff going on up there. So he's hearing mainly, more than anything else, I mean, he's getting plenty of praise about how he has worked with the QB, right? Yeah. But their coordinator is the guy who this week gets all the attention about this guy's, he's a whiz, he's a mastermind, and he does these remarkable trick plays. Every week he seems to find another one. Is there any concern you have, or you think Vikings fans should have, that KOC gets too caught up in that? Like, oh, well, we gotta, trick plays? We'll show them a couple of trick plays, as opposed to the old winning the battle, worrying too much about winning the battle and not enough about winning the war.
I don't think so. I think he's already very confident in what they can do from a passing perspective, especially. His trick plays have not really worked much, frankly, to be honest, in the past few years. It's not what makes the offense good. What makes the offense good are the play calls that he makes, and the way he's able to match the calls that he has on his sheet to the defense, what he expects the defense to do, and the answers he gives the quarterback if the defense does something different. And so I don't think he'll try to match trick play for trick play, but I do think he's going to try to get after it in the passing game pretty hard. And there's a good chance of success for that. There's a good history of success against the Lions doing that. And people might view that as him trying to match Ben Johnson, yard for yard, but I think it's really just leaning into the strength of what they have and what's the best chance they have for scoring a lot of points. And we've seen it over and over again when they get to very critical points in games, they rely on the pass. And so I don't expect that to be any different.
And again, I'm meat and potatoes guy, and I'm the guy who's been harping for 2 years about running the ball more, and that Jones represents a chance to do that. But I have to be realistic enough to say the way this offense has evolved over the course of the year, in conjunction with getting everybody healthy, including your tight end and your quarterback playing at the level he's playing, that's now what separates this offense from a lot of good ones. That still doesn't mean you can't factor in Jones. I'd love to see him factor in a little bit more in the passing game, although he did have a crucial, I think, third down conversion pass for short yardage, but it kept the chains going in this last game.
Yeah.
But that's realistically, that's sort of what they've become at this point, and you can't be foolish about, go run the ball, given the way it has evolved.
But what's wild, and I actually hadn't realized this until this week, Aaron Jones is 29 yards away from setting a career high in rushing yards.
That is crazy. I didn't realize that either.
And he's already set a career high in carries. He has 245 carries. They've given him the ball more than he's ever had, and it was 16 games. So that's true. It's not like it's more because there's an extra game. So there's no doubt that that's been supplementary and complementary to their offense over the course of the year. It's been a key supplement and a key complement to their offense, but he's had a pretty dang good season. And if he gets 29 yards Sunday night and a total of 80, I think it's 87 all-purpose yards, it'll be the most yards he's ever had in a season in his career, and he's been going for a long time.
Who's the receiver who you think is most likely to make hay in this game of the Vikings? Weapons.
The amazing thing is that you would always say that the first step is to take Justin Jefferson away. He didn't have a stud game against them in the most recently, but he's had some, and we had talked about it heading into that game. He's lit up the Lions defense in the Kevin O'Connell era. And so I would start there. I think that and it might mean that he doesn't have any catches in the first quarter or the second quarter, or they don't get to him until the second quarter, like happened against Green Bay. He still ends up with a near 100-yard game, but I think that's gonna happen. Jordan Addison had a really good game in the last game of the year against them. It didn't really count in terms of standings or anything, but I think they all have a good chance, but I'm not looking past Jefferson at all in this game.
Texter guy writes, having 14-2 teams play with one getting the bye, is it time to expand NFL playoffs to 8 teams and eliminate the bye altogether. The other conversation that always comes up at a time like this is do away with the notion that winning the division gives you precedence over a wild card if you have this kind of record disparity.
Yeah, and then the NFL will come back and say, well, this is the only time this has ever happened. So like you can't change the entire format because of one particular year. And then you'd have to, I guess I'd have to go back and look and see what the record of the number 8 team has been in the past few years. But I kind of think that the 14 teams is a sweet spot, and I like that the NFL, like, it means something to get to the playoffs, and so I don't. But like, if you have to put yourself in the mind of the NFL, like, can they sell another set of playoff games? And if the answer is yes, then they'll certainly be looking at it.
So injury wise, we're as healthy. I mean, healthier than one could expect.
Yeah.
Heading into the 17th game of the season.
Yeah,
correct?
It sounds like Pat Jones, the linebacker who had that hit, got hit by the tight end from the Packers, and the other day has not practiced this week, so it doesn't sound like he has a great chance to play. But for the most part, it looks like everyone else is going to be available. And
in the case of the Lions, like I said, what is the final number on the defensive players? Is it like 18? How many defensive players?
Well, in terms of key guys, players, you probably say a dozen. Which is a lot.
I mean, you guys track everything. Are we in unprecedented territory when it comes to the number of injuries, especially when you factor in their record?
I haven't seen anything that suggests that it's like qualified as any sort of objective thing, but I think if you just look at the performance of the defense, like, it'll tell you all you need to know. Like, they've gone south in a hurry.
Who is the most with it? If you let's just assume the Vikings win and then they have at least home field, which doesn't guarantee anything, but gives them that advantage. Who do you still view as the most dangerous other team, if you want at that point to view the Vikings as dangerous, in part because of their performance, in part because of the home field edge? Who's at the top of that list?
Philadelphia.
Philly, more than Detroit again.
Yeah, I think Philadelphia is going to be tough. I mean, that's. Both of their lines are probably better than both of the Vikings lines in terms of the matchup, and that's pretty dang important in football, and that's why they were good a couple years ago, and they've kind of recentered themselves around that as well. There's a lot of other reasons why the Eagles are good, but like that's what would worry me, like them controlling both lines of scrimmages.
Let's get one more break in. Seifert back for one more segment. Any more questions or observations? You know how to reach us. 64686 is the Bradshaw and Bryant KFAN text line. And then it'll be hockey, the Wild taking on the Caps. And it's Flower in net tonight for your favorite professional hockey team. Because this is the final segment for today's program. Minnesota Wild Hockey at the top of the 6 o'clock hour. Outstanding guest lineup today. If you missed Robert Smith, he joined us between 3:30 and 4. He's going to give us more time, as it turns out, on Sunday. In addition, a quick hit with Russo Radio on the latest regarding Spurgeon and other Wild injury/hockey news. He was between 4:15 and 4:30. We got some bonus Lavelle at the last minute because tomorrow's show, Seifert, is 90 minutes. So Seifert, I should say, Lavelle was going to miss his appearance tomorrow, so we squeezed him in today. He also seems optimistic about in fact, I think he almost called a semi-blowout victory in favor of the Vikings.
He's kind of bored with the whole thing.
Yeah, I wouldn't go crazy with that. The Lions still scare me on a number of fronts. But anyway.
What do I know? I just slipped into ESPN. So.
Yeah, you did. You just, and they've forgotten about you.
Yeah.
Right. They don't even know. I hope we're not letting the cat out of the bag in a way that ends up costing you your position.
Well, but I'll just stop talking.
Yeah, maybe that's the answer. Kevin Seifert in studio for the entire 5 o'clock hour. Tomorrow, we will have picks with Gerby. Sean Salisbury, who generally joins us on Thursdays, is going to join us about 3:05 tomorrow. We'll do a quick hit with him because obviously this week it's like all hands on deck, man. There's been no better week to talk football, obviously. And then Gessling is going to join us at 4 o'clock tomorrow. we're out at 4:30 because the Gophers have a bowl game. The Duke's Mayo Bowl.
Oh, the Mayo one.
In Charlotte, North Carolina. I think it's Virginia Tech is what Max told me. I can't remember the team we're playing, but I think it's Virginia Tech. And
I know it's not Virginia.
That's
I can
why we're
tell you
out.
that.
Are you in a bowl?
No.
Is it bad?
You have to win how many games again?
I think it's 6.
Yeah, not close.
Not even in the ballpark. Huh?
No.
Yeah. So final thoughts here with Seifert, who is already, he doesn't have to officially predict, but feels very good about the Vikings' chances to get this thing done. So the obvious question, I asked Lieber this, and I talked to Robert Smith about this. Somebody's going to probably, I guess it could be a tie, but realistically, somebody's going to lose Sunday night. And they still then have, I think, should have a belief that we can still be in this thing.
Yeah.
Right? It's not ideal. It's not what you're looking for. But there's that question, given all the emotion that should be attached to this game with all that's at stake, the old issue of how do teams properly calibrate for, we lost, but we're not done. It's not, our season hasn't ended.
Yeah.
We have to sort of retool and regroup, even if it means we got to go to Tampa Bay, and face Baker Mayfield, who just threw 5 touchdown passes.
Yeah, and it's going to, I think both teams, there's no other way to go at this game than all out. Like, there's no way that anybody's like thinking about, well, if we get way behind in this game, maybe we'll just rest some guys for the wild card round. Like that, I don't think any of that kind of mindset obviously is going to be coming in. So whoever loses is going to have to use that 24-hour rule to just there's going to be a massive decompress and a massive attempt to refocus. And that isn't something you can do on the fly. Like, that has to be a process that you've sort of worked on throughout a season or throughout multiple seasons, and your program is good about getting people to move in the direction you want them to go. And as much as I have, enjoyed the 1-0 cliche that I don't think has hardly much to do with what the Vikings getting to 14-2, I will say that it has required them on a weekly basis to at least outwardly and in many cases inwardly drop whatever happened the day, that Sunday or the Monday night or whatever, and start thinking about the next week. And so there's no doubt if the Vikings lose this game, they will be massively disappointed and will have to make a strong effort to refocus. Right. But they certainly have demonstrated throughout the course of this season that they can do that.
Is this true? This is from, let's see what area code we got. 320. Lions DBs are already spouting off. Could they all be overconfident? That scout from St. Cloud. Have I missed some bulletin board material that's starting to percolate?
Nothing major there. I think there was some Lions players saying something like, we're a bad matchup for them.
Oh.
Yeah, or something like that.
Offense or defense?
Yeah, their defense saying that. Yeah, and so I didn't read the entire story, but I think it was not something that I think is going to lead SportsCenter or anything like that. But I do, I don't think that people in Minnesota in the Vikings building in Eagan will think too much about that if they just look at the stats that they've put up against the Lions defense over the course of the O'Connell era. So, final thoughts about this game. You've pretty much said, even if we do not have our usual takeaway turnover ratio lead, you think this is still very winnable for the Vikings, primarily because you fully expect this offense to expose that defense. Is that correct? Yes. I think they're more rested. I think their offense has a massive advantage against their defense. And what would trip them up is if they do what they've done in other Lions games, which is commit too many turnovers.
So is this also correct? If we tie, we lose.
Yep.
Is that correct?
Okay.
Win. We got to win this game.
Yep.
Well, that's good then.
Basically, if the Lions and Vikings end up with the same record,
what's the tiebreaker? They would have gotten. Yeah, they would have beaten us in one game and tied us in the other.
Well, but that's
not head to head.
It would still if the Vikings don't win any tiebreakers of the Lions is the easiest way to look at it. And
gotcha.
So, the Vikings need to have a better record than the Lions to win the division.
Somebody also texted earlier because it's impossible to not think of the future as well as the present. That if the Vikings did reach a point where they wanted to entertain trading J.J. McCarthy. That there are people, media outlets, who suggested the Vikings could get 2 number ones for him. Do you buy that?
No, what Adam Schefter said it was only yesterday morning, I think, on ESPN Radio, is that he has no doubt that there will be teams that call the Vikings about JJ, especially early in the offseason before there's any public decision on Sam Darnold, and that he has no idea if the Vikings would be interested in doing that, and they might say no, and that's the end of it. But if they pursue it, what he said is that it's very clear to him that they could get everything they put into him and more. So they put in a first-round pick plus I'm trying to think what they used to trade up to go from 11 to 10. So like a third-day pick as well. So they could get at least like a number 10-ish pick and another pick. And that's what Schefter reported and said he felt pretty confident about. But in terms of whether the Vikings want to do that, which is kind of a big part of this whole story, yes, there's no indication.
Is there any reason to believe? Is there anything stopping the Vikings from, let's say we get the number 1 seed, win the game, get the number 1 seed, we got plenty of time. And during that break, the Vikings announced they've come to terms with Sam Darnold to keep him here beyond this season.
Is there any reason why they couldn't do that?
Or maybe I better ask, is there any reason why they would even consider doing that? Even before, moving forward?
I don't think he would have any reason to do that. Like the leverage is now on his side.
Because they're not going to blow him out of the water.
Probably
they're not going to, give him a number. He goes, yeah, let's sign right now.
Yeah, and I mean they could always franchise tag, but like it's the amazing thing is like he's played well enough that it's to his advantage to push it to any deadline the last deadline that he can.
The Johnny Athletic theory is maybe it's homerish. He admits it. If Darnold, let's say the Vikings win, let's say by 2 touchdowns, and they score 40.
Yeah. They
win like 40-28 or something. And Darnold throws 3 touchdown passes, runs in for another one in a trick play. That it's not too late for Darnold to win the MVP award. I'm not sure I buy it, but I do think recency bias being what it is, he could gain some votes. Should he be in the MVP discussion? And is there any chance he could steal it?
He should be in the discussion. If you were to really analyze the Vikings season, I think their defense was a bigger reason why they were, started off strong than him or their offense. But he has certainly turned it up down the stretch. He should be in the discussion. He was a Pro Bowler. He deserved to be. I don't think he can do anything to win it at this point.
I think that's fair. I appreciate the effort because I know it's a pain in the butt to get here late. You had a big, busy day at TCO, so we always appreciate the time. We'll chat next week, preparing for the week off. Right?
We'll see.
Who's to say?
Yeah.
Kevin Seifert, you can, believe it or not, Lavelle might not know this, but he's available at ESPN and ESPN.com if you like to read him. Music now from the Spinners because we've got a Minnesota Wild hockey coming up. Max and I back tomorrow for a further truncated 90-minute show tomorrow that will have plenty of football discussion, I promise you, including with our guy Sean Salisbury. Enjoy the hockey tonight, and we'll talk to you tomorrow at 3.